Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Ernst, Ms. Ernst, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan.
What you see here is a vote
Hawley,
to
Mr. Heinrich,
either call witnesses or not call witnesses.
Mr. Hickenlooper,
This is
Mr.
desperate
Rono,
Democrats
Mr.
trying to
Hogan,
call one witness.
Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kane,
And if they call one witness, then the Republicans have their right, or should have their
Mr.
right,
Kennedy,
to call their witnesses, as
Mr.
many as
King,
they feel necessary. This
Ms.
is
Klobuchar,
unfortunately another unconstitutional
Langford,
move by the Democrats,
Mr. Leahy,
who have control of
Mr.
the
Lee,
Senate now
Mr. Lula,
by one vote.
Ms. Lummis,
And you might see some
Mr.
Republicans
Manchin,
who
Mr.
are,
Markey,
in my opinion, traitors
Mr.
to
Marshall,
the Constitution and
Mr.
to the
McConnell,
Republican Party and to
Mr.
justice and
Menendez,
honorable discharge
Mr.
of their
Murphy,
duties,
Mr.
voting
Moran,
to call this witness,
Ms.
Senator
Murkowski,
McCarthy.
Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla,
Our Representative
Mr.
McCarthy.
Paul, Mr. Peters,
After the fact
Mr.
of
Portman,
the rioters
Mr. Reed,
doing their
Mr.
deeds
Rich,
at the Capitol,
Mr. Romney,
which has nothing to do with
Ms.
inciting
Rudnick,
the event, which they have
Mr.
proven
Rouse,
that Donald Trump did not have anything to
Mr.
do with
Rubio,
inciting the event. It was already
Mr.
pre-planned
Sanders,
by other radicals.
Mr. Sass, Mr. Schatz,
And the only reason it happened was
Mr.
because
Schumer,
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck
Mr. Scott
Schumer
of Florida,
did not call in the
Mr.
National
Scott of
Guard,
South Carolina,
as well as the Mayor
Mr.
Bowser
Shaheen,
of Washington, D.C.,
Mr.
even though the
Shelby,
National Guard was ready to come in and waiting for the call, and
Ms.
should have been
Scanlon,
called 2 or 3 days in
Ms.
advance
Smith,
of this
Ms. Stabenow,
January 6th
Mr.
speech,
Sullivan,
because the
Mr.
FBI
Jackson,
had provided them with
Mr.
information that it was pre-planned.
Mr. Tillis,
Instead,
Mr.
they
Toomey,
apparently wanted the
Mr.
altercation to take
Tuberville,
place to try to do
Mr.
something
Van Hollen,
to embarrass President Donald
Mr.
Trump,
Warner,
who was
Mr.
contesting the
Warnock,
election, rightfully
Ms.
so.
Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden,
The word has come out that
Mr.
Senator McConnell is going to vote for acquittal, and I'm very happy with that because I worked very hard for him in his campaign and in Donald Trump's campaign. And Kentuckians are for acquittal by a large margin. So we'll see what the vote is. Remember, now in the Senate, unfortunately, thanks to Georgia, we have one senator vote too many Democrats with the help of the vice president's vote.
Senators voting in the affirmative: Baldwin, Bennett, Blumenthal, Booker, Brown, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Collins, Coons, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, Durbin, Feinstein, Gillibrand, Hassan, Heinrich, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kane, Kelly, King, Klobuchar, Leahy, Lujan, Manchin, Markey, Menendez, Merkley, Murkowski, Murphy, Murray, Ossoff, Padilla, Peters, Reed, Romney, Rosen, Sanders, Sass, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen, Sinema, Smith, Stabenow, Tester, Van Hollen, Warner, Warnock, Warren, Whitehouse, Wyden. Senators voting in the negative: Barrasso, Blackburn, Blunt, Bozeman, Braun, Burr, Capito, Cassidy, Cornyn, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Cruz, Daines, Ernst, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Haggerty, Hawley, Hogan, Heidsmith, Inhofe, Johnson, Kennedy, Langford, Lee, Lummis, Marshall, McConnell, Moran, Paul, Portman, Risch, Rounds, Rubio, Scott of Florida, Scott of South Carolina, Shelby, Sullivan, Thune, Tillis, Toomey, Tuberville, Wicker, Young.
Mr. President? I'd like to change my vote to aye.
Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, aye.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sullivan.
just a point of inquiry, there's a little confusion here. Was that a vote on one witness or many witnesses?
Debate is not allowed during the vote.
Not debate, it's a
Senator
point of
Alaska.
inquiry. Mr. President, it's a point of inquiry on what we just voted on.
That is, I'm advised that is not allowed during the vote.
Can immediately before we start to cast.
Another dirty trick by the Democrats. Won't even explain the question. Whether it's for one witness or all witnesses.
Points of order and debate are not allowed during the vote. That is established Senate procedure that we always follow.
All right, very quickly, I want to explain the significance of what happened. 5 Republican senators, including a switch at the last second by Lindsey Graham, have voted in favor of considering witnesses. They include Lindsey Graham, Ben Sass of Nebraska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine, Senator Murkowski of Alaska, who all want witnesses now. Now, this was spurred by this Kevin McCarthy conversation that came to light. He had with the president in the middle of the riots going on in Capitol Hill that day on January 6th. He shared that conversation with Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler the Republican from Washington, you might remember she was one of 10 Republican congressmen who voted to impeach the president. This would seem to trigger, the push for getting, witnesses and to go ahead and question them, whether they're done in person or, via Zoom. But therein lies what could be an extensive lengthening of this entire matter. Let's go back to the Senate floor.
The Democrats want to delay it just to carry it out and keep it going to distract from all of the evil things that President Obama, or I should say Biden, is doing with his 50 or more executive orders.
I know.
So far, only 5 senators, 5 Republicans have voted for call for witnesses. That included a change of vote by Lindsey Graham.
On the question of whether it shall be in order to consider and debate under the rules of impeachment any motion to subpoena witnesses or documents, the motion is agreed to by a vote of 55 to 45. Majority Leader.
Mr. President,
Majority.
I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
All right, a significant development, maybe even a surprise here, where 5 Republicans, including Lindsey Graham, a close confidant and supporter of the president, voting that, yeah, it's probably a good idea to allow witnesses. He joins PENCE of Nebraska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine, and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. 5 Republican senators who are open to the idea of witnesses. Now, the reason why that is a significant development is it could significantly lengthen this entire process. You've been hearing from the president's lawyer, part of his team, Michael Van Der Veen, who was saying that, you make this move, I'm going to have to depose a lot of folks, and maybe 100 or more. I'm going to want to do it in Philadelphia, and he got some chuckles over that. He was saying, that is my right, and that's the way these type of procedures go. But again, these type of procedures here at the point we are a bit unprecedented here. Now, a lot of this was born of this news of a call that the House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, had with the president, Donald Trump, at the time, in the middle of this siege of the Capitol, in which he said, you got to call them off, Mr. President, you got to call them off. He relayed this conversation to Republican Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler. You might recall she was one of 10 Republican congressmen who voted for impeachment in the House. McCarthy had apparently told her that he had told the president to publicly and forcefully call off the riot. The president reportedly said in response, this is coming from Congresswoman Herrera Butler's account of that conversation. Well, Kevin, again, coming from Donald Trump, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are. The news of that spread like wildfire. There's no confirmation of this. Lindsey Graham wanted that to be investigated a little bit more. But obviously there was enough hullabaloo over it that Lindsey Graham himself is now interested in witnesses. So this changes a lot of things. Chet Pergram on how significantly so. What are we looking at now, Chet?
This is an earthquake on Capitol Hill. This really shifted the tectonic plates of this trial dramatically, because what this means, and if you look at the actual impeachment rules, the framework set up for this trial, that means that you're probably going to have the trial go dark for a couple of weeks if they do it by the book. And have to have witnesses and depositions. Again, you had Jamie Raskin, the lead impeachment manager. He was saying, look, I'm going to do this by Zoom. We can do this rather quickly. And as you point out, Mike Vander Veen, the counsel for the president, he said, no, we're going to do this in Philadelphia. And he emphasized each syllable of the city of Philadelphia. He said, in my office. He wants Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. He wants Kamala Harris, the Vice President. He said he would have to take, 100 depositions. We had a vote to subpoena witnesses last time, and there were 2 Republican senators who voted yes in the impeachment trial in 2020, Mitt Romney and Susan Collins. You also had this gateway vote where the Senate trial took off for about a week or so in 1999 with President Clinton. That was a little more baked into the cake. We thought today, maybe even by late morning, midday, we would be through with final arguments in this case, and barring anything unexpected here, they could be, breaking this off, having depositions, coming back later in February. Keep in mind how this runs headlong into the issue of trying to finish a coronavirus bill. And I wouldn't be surprised that if some of the Republicans, they saw that Democrats were willing to go to the mat and request witnesses in this case. The fact that Jamie Raskin, up until this point, and Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, he kept deferring to Raskin, saying, well, we'll see what Congressman Raskin, the lead impeachment manager, has to say. And once Raskin opened that door, Republicans said, okay, we're going to jump on the bandwagon here because we see an opportunity to drag this out. Some of that is probably steeped in the idea that they do want to learn more about those conversations and also see what was afoot there that day. But some of it also is political, frankly. They think, okay, this is bad politics for the Democrats. They think it was bad, obviously, for the Democrats to even pursue this impeachment trial ex post facto of the former president. That's significant right here. So they're expected to drag this thing out. I mean, what's so interesting, Neil, is so much of what they do on Capitol Hill is scripted. We go in and we kind of know where the score is going to be in the 8th and 9th inning.
It's all corrupt politics, folks. Believe me, from someone who's been a Democrat most of his life and is for the last 10, 12 years has been a Republican, and it's all politics, dirty politics, even racist politics, and by the Democrats, unfortunately. They've gone off the deep end liberal. I think they've even sold out to China. It's shocking, frankly.
You see, and that's something that's up in the air. Some of this is so brand new, we don't really know. Keep in mind that Kevin McCarthy, it was widely reported that he had this screaming match with the President of the United States, trying to get the National Guard up here, while his office was being ransacked and marauders going through it. He said later on the floor when the House reconvened to certify the electoral votes that this was the worst day he had ever seen in Congress. He was a staffer for Bill Thomas long before he was a congressman here. Bill Thomas, Republican from California, and chair of the Ways and Means Committee, so he's well steeped.
Getting the National Guard up there was Nancy Pelosi's and Mayor Bowser's and Chuck Schumer's job. They didn't want it because it didn't look like good political optics. Shamefully. The National Guard should have been in there like they had it for the inauguration 3 days before that speech even took place, and none of this would have happened. But they had in their little strategy minds this could create problems and make Trump look bad.
Very political process, and an impeachment trial, the founders intended an impeachment trial to be a political process, actually starts to mirror what goes on in a court of law. And what has also shifted here is that the impeachment managers who were heralded with their presentation earlier in the week may have lost ball control, because what this really does is this goes over to Mike Vander Veen and the president's attorneys, and he's like, okay, we're going to have Nancy Pelosi in my office. What this means is that they will treat this more like a regular conventional courtroom trial, and that's different than a trial that you have in the Senate. And so maybe, the impeachment managers, as I say, lost a little bit of ball control here. That is significant, and that's why this is so organic, why this is shifting so dramatically here this morning.
You're not supposed to have these these types of Perry Mason moments where someone just jumps up and says, wait, I have evidence to give. I mean, this is a member who was aware of this conversation for weeks. Presumably other members were aware of it. So it's, in a normal court of law, a judge would go absolutely ballistic to have a witness appear at that late stage. Now, having said that, I've always said that the House should be able to try its case. I've generally always favored witnesses in all of the presidential impeachments. But, there is a real question here of how to do this logistically. There are a dozen witnesses that could give direct testimony on what the president said and did during this critical period. The House had 4 weeks after the snap impeachment and didn't call one of them. Instead, they wanted to try this case on the circumstantial evidence that was presented when it came to the former president's state of mind. So all of this is rather incoherent as to what the strategy really is. And today's argument was really quite embarrassing. The defense counsel asking, "Why are you laughing?" is never a good sign for any lawyer. I mean, his suggestion that this be done in Philadelphia was absurd. When I was one of the lead counsels in the Porteous impeachment, we did a great number of depositions before the Senate trial. All were on Capitol Hill. That's the tradition. But he's also allowing himself to get very upset and too casual. It's not a good thing when you're representing someone accused of violent incitement, when you seem to have anger management issues in front of the Senate. And, the whole thing just seemed to just careen out of control.
Jonathan, great analysis. By the way, you and I are the only ones who got that Perry Mason reference, so I appreciate that. But I am wondering, just kidding, but I am wondering where this takes the process. And we're told that it could add significantly, maybe weeks, to this whole matter, because obviously Democrats have their witnesses. They want to talk to Congresswoman Butler. They want to obviously talk, to Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, who was apparently apprising the president, we're told, at his own phone call, of the whereabouts of Mike Pence. So that will trigger Republicans wanting to hear from, among others, the mayor of Washington, D.C., on and we go. And I'm just wondering here, it seems like the genie's out of the bottle, and if nothing puts a cap on this bottle anytime soon. How do you see this playing out?
Well, this does fall into that category. Be careful what you ask for. It was strange that the House didn't call any witness for 4 weeks to lock in their testimony. It was strange that they wanted to try this circumstantially on the state of mind of the president. Now they're opening the door to bring in these witnesses who may actually offer conflicting accounts as to how the president appeared and what he did. There's so many unanswered questions about when the National Guard was first offered, why it was refused, whether there was any delay in their deployment from the White House. Those questions, if answered, could cut both ways. And so we are now sort of cutting the moorings on this case. If they're going to truly allow the discovery and the testimony that the House never bothered to secure, this could drift in uncertain directions.
So let me ask you about where Democrats are on this. All they wanted to prove is that essentially Donald Trump lit the match. He started the fire. He instigated
and they didn't prove it
on Capitol Hill. So how the Capitol
so they're trying to now sneak in an extra witness.
They're even going to care that they have enough evidence now, and if they go, to talk to this Congresswoman, 10 who voted for the impeachment in the House and hit her against Kevin McCarthy, who might or might not confirm this recounting of the conversation he had with the president, that he should call his supporters off and all of that. Bottom line, you're the constitutional expert here, Jonathan, but I see it as a mess, and it's going to get messier.
It's a circus. I mean, this is enough to make Barnum and Bailey blush. I mean, I don't understand where the adult supervision comes in here. I mean, to have sudden surprise witnesses jump up, to have defense counsel seeming to be working through anger management in front of the entire country, to have these conflicting positions. Some of the senators that just voted for witnesses said a few hours ago they didn't want witnesses. But this is one of those issues of you have to go all the way.
The Democrats were losing and lost their case, so they were desperate. Pretty simple to me.
necessarily must allow witnesses for the defense. If they start to limit it, then it becomes sort of manufacturing a verdict. So they have made a critical choice here that could transform this trial. And what's fascinating is most of these politicians are risk adverse. You know, they don't like to take votes that they don't know how they will play out politically. This is one of the most remarkable votes I have seen in working with Congress for decades. There is no way they know how this one's going to play out if they really are going to allow witnesses. The only way they can control the risk is to allow the witnesses the House it may want, but severely limiting the witnesses from the defense. And by the way, the witnesses for the defense, I mean, putting aside the bizarre statement about having these depositions done in Philadelphia, the witnesses the defense should be calling are not people like Pelosi. And once again, I'm just sort of confused as what the defense is trying to do. There are core witnesses that can be called to determine the president's state of mind. And I think that we need to look objectively at whether we want questions to be answered or whether this is just more political kabuki.
Very interesting, John. Yeah, it does seem that the Republican witness list would read more like those who handled and tried to handle the insurgency at the Capitol while it was on, and whether they dropped the ball. But once it was on, the Democrats view this, the House managers view this as it was instigated by Donald J. Trump. But Jonathan, I'm sure we'll be coming back to you later. Again, for those of you just joining us, the Senate has voted 55 to 45 to go ahead and subpoena witnesses. And this could add considerably to that. 5 Republicans voted to do so. 45, though, I should point out, did not, including my next guest, Senator Roger Marshall, the Kansas Senator Republican. Senator, what did you make of your 5 colleagues, including Lindsey Graham, who thought differently than you?
Well, I think Lindsey's got something up his sleeve there, but this is a political Hail Mary and just proves my point that President Trump lives rent-free in the heads of Democrats. So this is another Hail Mary that's going nowhere and proves my second point. We should be focused on getting vaccinations in people's arms, getting the economy going again. A year ago, Nancy Pelosi, the same games, impeachment trial, inviting people to Chinatown. A year later, we had this virus on the run, and here we are in a prolonged impeachment hearing. And if I can make one more point that America needs to realize, there's only one article of impeachment. Did Donald Trump incite a crowd into a riot? And the prosecutors here proved that that's not true. That for weeks and months before this event, that group was forming and premeditated, and that 44 minutes before the speech started, they were already there at the foot of the Capitol. So
that's right.
Hail Mary, very frustrating. We need to get back to the work of the people.
That's right. God bless
again,
you.
Senator, to your point, at least 5 of your colleagues are at least willing to consider, the background to that political Hail Mary. But I will ask you, and we should be fair here, that Kevin McCarthy himself has not confirmed this supposed conversation he had with Congresswoman Herrera Butler, in which she recounted the president had told him in the middle of all this rioting going on in the Hill, well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are. If that is true, if the president did say that, Senator, would you be angry? Would you say that maybe these actions today are justified?
Well, look, I would be angry, but that's not what the president's been charged with. This would be, think about due process. If you're in the middle of a trial for speeding, and in the middle of the trial they're going to charge you for robbing a bank, we know that's not due process. 3 constitutional issues here that the prosecutors have not adequately addressed. Can you impeach a president after he's left office? His freedom of speech, and then this point here of due process.
Senator, I know that. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, sir. It wasn't clear. I mean, and I know what you're saying about did he instigate it, but in the middle of it all, when it was going on, did he do nothing to stop it? Would that add a level of doubt to your views here that the president could have gotten this under control, but if this conversation is true, he did nothing to do so?
Look, there's more questions than answers here, and that's why we needed a due process. There's too many facts out there for me to even begin to speculate on what the president knew. I think the real question is, what did Nancy Pelosi know, and when did she
Again,
know?
you're operating off of
Obviously, with all
rumor,
the
Neil.
intelligence here, what
This
do
is
you know about
rumor.
security
Nothing is
today,
factual
right?
there.
Senator, obviously this comes at a time when President Biden is trying to get a $1.9 trillion stimulus plan out. I know you've had concerns about the size of that, but at the very least, this could delay action on that, right? I mean, I know that old line, all of you guys can walk and chew gum at the same time, but no offense to you, Senator, that rarely seems to be the case. So I guess what I'm asking you is the stimulus now likely put off because of this?
Well, I assume it will be, but I've not seen the Senate or the House be able to walk and chew gum. I've never seen that happen. We've been treading water here since the day we were sworn in. But the good news is we got the virus on the run. This takes our eye off the ball. We should be locked in on getting vaccinations in people's arms. We got 60 million vaccinations out the door. Let's get those in people's arms. We could have herd immunity by April or May if we do our job. But I think you're spot on. This is going to delay things going forward. For instance,
Roger
we have the
Marshall,
Secretary of Agriculture,
Republican from Kansas.
The Secretary of Agriculture has
Senator.
$1.5 billion.
Great job.
Previously earmarked CARES dollars there. That money could be going to food banks, helping getting food on the tables of people who need it the most. But we're locked down right now.
Senator, thank you very much. I know you've had a very
a recognition very late in the game that they have not made their case. So what they want to do is to drag this out so they can keep the issues alive, keep beating up on Mr. Trump, keep the issue focused on that rather than other things. It also points out, Neil, how different this proceeding is from a real trial. The witness that they are proposing to bring on is a hearsay witness.
Former
that
Clinton
would not be
impeachment
allowed
manager.
because the actual person who spoke the words or heard the conversation, that is Mr. McCarthy, is available. The timeliness of this would cause a trial judge to deny the motion for witnesses. And now we have this notion that, well, what we're really charging the president with is dereliction of duty. That has nothing to do with the article of impeachment and is utterly irrelevant to the issue of the impeachment charge.
So, Congressman, let's say Kevin McCarthy comes out and confirms what Jamie Herrera Butler said of the account of that conversation, and the president did say that.
You can't do that, Neil. That's hearsay. And you're trying to influence the public with rumors.
Not as a Republican, not as a former, impeachment manager in your own right. Would that be a game changer in your eyes that in the middle of this uprising on the Hill, if true, and again, to your point, Kevin McCarthy hasn't commented on this, the president appeared to do little to stop it. In fact, he sounded like he was embracing it.
Nonsense.
I don't think that's the case. It would be a real jump for senators to read that into it. To me, it is absolutely, utterly irrelevant. And really, if you look at the words that purportedly were said now in a hearsay context, it cuts both ways. If, in fact, the president said something to the effect that, these people seem more concerned about